Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Bragg. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you all for attending today.
The National Australia Bank is making a number of branches cashless and have confirmed by email they now have 9 small format cashless branches across New South Wales, Queensland and Victoria. The Senate rejected the Liberal Nationals' cash ban bill and sent a very clear message that cash should remain available. Cash is legal tender. So on what basis are APRA allowing a situation where the Queen's currency is not legal tender inside a bank branch?
So, Senator, I don't think we are allowing or not allowing any such thing. We don't have any role or responsibility in that area. The banks increasingly are responding to the way in which the majority of their customers are choosing to transact, and for the majority of their customers it's digital. And so we are seeing a shift away from the traditional bank branch, as you say, but to what I'd call various forms of servicing their customers, and these particular, I've forgotten what you called them, but the cashless branch, I think was the phrase.
Small format cashless
small format,
branch.
yeah. Just another way in which they can hopefully continue to cost effectively service their customers. It's not, as you say, it's a small number, but it doesn't imply anything about APRA allowing people not to accept legal tender. That's not a correct characterisation of it.
Wasn't quite the question, but that's fine. APRA's definition of a bank branch includes the requirement to take and issue cash and change. Will you be advising NAB to stop describing cashless offices as bank branches? It's a clear misrepresentation of the services on offer, isn't it?
Well, that definition applies to a reporting standard that we use to collect annual data on the points of presence, and so I have no reason to think that for the purpose of that reporting standard, the National Australia Bank is in any way misreporting. But that definition doesn't apply more broadly to the way in which banks talk about their services. It's purely focused on a reporting standard for APRA.
Well, I've got a glossary here from APRA's website, and it says, branches are face-to-face points of presence that meet the following minimum criteria. First of all, they accept cash and other deposits, including business deposits, and provide change. And then they list another 4.
Yes, and for the purposes of reporting to us and for the purposes of reporting in our points of presence collection, that is the way in which branches are to be reported.
So I also have here from APRA, authorised deposit-taking institutions, points of presence statistics.
Yes.
APRA have maintained a database of authorised deposit-taking institutions, points of reference, points of presence, shorthand, the database. This database makes a clear differentiation between bank branches and bank offices, the latter being described as other face-to-face. So we've got a column here for branch, we've got a list, a location, branch, whether it's a branch, whether it's other face-to-face or an ATM. So this database makes a clear differentiation between bank branches and bank offices, the latter being described as other face-to-face, as I just said.
Yes.
Will you ensure all branches that do not accept and issue cash are downgraded to other rather than continuing to show as a bank branch?
Well, I think that's where they should be reported already, but if they're not, then we would need to make sure that they were.
Okay, thank you. The Quill Awards for Excellence in Victorian Journalism at the Melbourne Press Club recently awarded journalist Dale Webster a regional Quill Award for her investigation of the true extent of bank branch closures in Australia. The article was awarded for, and I quote, busting layer upon layer of myths being perpetuated by the banking sector and blew the whistle on errors in official data that have been published by the government unchecked for decades, end of quote. So that's your database that they're talking about, Mr. Byres, isn't it? How good is your database?
Well, I think the database is fine. The database is the facts that have been reported, and I have no reason to think that there's problems with the underlying data.
So we've just discussed that something is, a branch is labelled as a branch even if it doesn't have face-to-face operation.
Well, as I said before, our definition says a branch should have, and you had the definition there, it should have cash, and then there was other face-to-face.
Yep.
So that is the definition, and that should
The
be the way
database
in
is
which
wrong.
that is. Well, I'm not sure it is, but we can go away and have another look at that issue.
Could you?
for
Could you get back to us, please?
Happy to do so.
Thank you. So I would like to ask about an issue raised in Dale Webster's article, and I'll quote, 92 country towns across 38 federal electorates have lost all their banks and agencies, that's Australia Post, newsagents, nothing that doubles as a banking service provider. And now those towns have no banking services. The number of branches in rural and regional areas has fallen over the last 20 years from a high of 2,802 branches in 1,126 towns down to the current 1,075 branches in 387 towns. That's a 62% cut.
Yes, I'll agree with your maths.
Has APRA made any effort to stem the carnage in rural banking? If not, why not?
So I think we have, so absolutely agree with the concern that you have, Senator. It's a trend that's been going for some time. I'll see if my colleague, Mr Lonsdale, who's on the line, wants to jump in with anything, but we don't have a role to play in saying where banks have branches and where they don't have branches, but we understand entirely the problem that's existing. As I said, it's a trend within society that finance is going digital and bank branches are not profitable. So we have been working with the other arms of government on thinking about solutions to this debanking problem, but it's not something that we'll be able to solve on our own. But
So it's not
absolutely.
part of APRA's charter, but who else could it be?
Well, it's a government problem. I don't know whether, John, you want to add anything to that?
Thanks, Chair. So thanks, Senator, for your question. The thing that I would add is, yes, branches have declined in number, and that's not just the case in regional areas, but it's the case in other areas in the country as well. But what our data is not picking up that I think is interesting is that there have been other ways, particularly in recent years, that customers have been accessing the financial system more electronically. And I take your point that for some people in regional areas, having a branch there is very, very important, so it doesn't undermine that. But there are other avenues as well. So that's something to think through.
Minister, what do you think about the 62% reduction in bank branches?
Senator Robert, this is something that we receive correspondence about on a regular basis, and I know it's something that's come up with some of my regional rural colleagues as well. The government hasn't got a specific policy that would compel banks to open up in regional rural areas, and we understand that they are very much the private sector, although they do operate under a social contract. It's something that I think in the next term of Parliament I'd be happy to talk to you further about and discuss what solutions you might consider appropriate.
Okay, thank you. This comes from the NAB correspondence we have here. In this description of these new cashless offices, they say, quote, "In these branches, customers will benefit from more meetings spaces with video conferencing facilities and a digital bar." I don't know what a digital bar is. "So we can provide more guidance on the ways to do everyday banking." End of quote. Does the definition of a bank branch include the need to have on hand suitably qualified staff able to exercise their duty as a responsible banker?
Well, again, the only definition of a branch that we have is the one for reporting purposes, and the definition is the one that you quoted before, Senator. I'm sure you had that definition right. So the definition doesn't have that level of specificity in it.
It has another 4 criteria in addition to the ability to accept cash and other deposits. Facilitate the keeping of accounts for customer access, including the provision of account balances. Open and close accounts. can facilitate or arrange the assessment of the credit risk of existing and potential customers, and offer additional services in the one establishment such as financial services, business banking and specialist lending. So we're skirting with the banking code of practice. So this is a serious question. Does a concierge directing customers to a computer screen to talk to a bank employee in a remote or international location satisfy your definition of diligence? Just how dumbed down are we going to let the bank branches get?
Well, I'm not sure that fits with our definition, or it fits with the intent of our definition. The intent of the definition is to describe locations where you can, at a branch, do those things you talked about: transact cash, open and close accounts, etc., etc. So the fact that there are other types of operations in addition to branches that are there, I don't see why we would need to have a problem or an issue with those.
This goes to the customer service of the banks
Yes?
and servicing rural Australia.
Absolutely, and there are challenges there. And banks are always trying to work out how to do that in a way that is cost effective, a way they can service the community in a way that's cost effective.
Well, are you saying, it sounds like it to me, but I'll just check with you, are you saying that a bank office having no suitably qualified banking staff able to exercise their duty as a responsible banker in person is still a branch nonetheless? This is a requirement of the Banking Code of Practice. Is that document just a complete joke?
No, I'm just wary of commenting on a code of practice that we don't administer or enforce.
What's your view on it?
Sorry, could you repeat that question then? What's my view on what, sorry?
It sounds like you're saying that a bank office having no suitably qualified banking staff able to exercise their duty as a responsible banker in person is still a branch nonetheless.
Well, for the purposes of the definition, it's still defined as a branch, but clearly not having qualified staff in your operations is not diligent operations. I mean, that's simple business practice.
So does APRA need to get closer to... Is APRA too close to the banks? Do you need to get further away from them?
No, so these things, right, as you pointed out, these things are part of the Banking Code of Practice, and the Banking Code of Practice is overseen by ASIC.
So Senator Roberts.
That's it.
Oh,
Thank you very much.